In a previous video, I explained what is KiCad and some of the tools it has to offer. In this particular video, we'll try to explore more about KiCad, especially how to navigate around KiCad and see how some of its tools work. If you like to follow along, you can download the example project from the description. Once you download the project, you can go to File, Open Project, and you can open the User Interface project. Once the project is open the schematic file. Now don't get overwhelmed with the amount of icons and tools on the schematic editor. Let's take baby steps and focus on a few tools at a time. This is the document where you draw your schematics and connections. Now if you like to zoom in and zoom out of the document, you can use the scroll wheel. And if you like to move across the document, you can either use the middle click and drag, or you can use right click and drag to pan across the document. Now if you look close to the taskbar, we have few values here. So starting with Z. So this Z indicates the zoom in and zoom out level. Then we have the X and Y coordinate of the cursor that we are moving around the screen. Followed by we have DX, DY and the distance. Now let me zoom into the schematic. Let's see how we can use the distance or how to measure distance between two different symbols. For example, if I want to know the distance between these two components, I can place the cursor on this component and press spacebar to reset the dx and dy value. And now we can move the cursor to the second component to see the distance. So this feature might not be very handy in the schematic editor, but it'll help a lot in the PCB editor. And now if I zoom in and zoom out, you can see small points where our cursor snaps onto. These are called grid points, which will be of great help when connecting two components together. So we don't have to fiddle around to connect them properly. And you can see the distance between them over here. And finally, the mm represents the millimeter. That means all the values that are shown here are in millimeters. There are a few more navigation tools on the top. You can see you can use these two buttons to undo and redo any changes that you make, followed by the find button to search for things on the schematics. And you can see once it finds the item, it's been highlighted by the pink color. Then we have find and replace, where we can use the find and replace to search for the text and replace them with a different text. Now let's say for some reason you're not able to use your scroll wheel to zoom in or zoom out. So that's the reason we have some additional tools on the top to zoom in and zoom out of the schematic editor, where you can use the plus symbol to zoom in and minus symbol to zoom out, and followed by the zoom to fit. This will try to fit your entire document to the display, just like this. Now if you want just your schematic to fit to the entire screen, you can use zoom to objects. So you can see your entire schematic is fit to the display. Now what if you want to zoom into specific component or a specific part of the circuit? For that we have zoom to selection. Click on this and we can make a selection which has to be zoomed in to fit the display. And that's how zoom to selection works. Now that completes a very minimum navigation that's needed in the schematic editor. Now let's dive a little deeper and start at the tools on the left and slowly work our way towards the tools on the right. This tool will help in turning on and turning off the grid, just in case if you want to take a screenshot or maybe you want to have a better look at the schematics. But I prefer keeping it on so I know where I'm placing my components and how they are connecting to each other. Now we have these three buttons which will help in setting the document units. You can either use inches, mils or mm. You can also see that's been reflected on the bottom. I prefer using mm, and all the dimension and calculation in the future videos will be based on mm. Next we have the crosshair. The plus graphic that follows around the cursor is the crosshair, and you can toggle between full screen and short crosshair using this button. And in most cases I use the short one, and in some cases where I need to align two components, in that case I switch to full screen crosshair. Followed by we have something called as hidden pins. This button will help in hide or unhide the hidden pins which are usually created by the power symbols. These three buttons will help in angle of the wire that's connecting between two components. I usually keep everything at 90°, but if you like to turn off and go crazy, you can do this. Or you can switch to the last mode to have an additional option of 45°. Now if you see the names D1, U1, U2, SW, they're called as designators and it's auto-generated by KiCad. You can either keep this automatic annotation turned on so it creates the number for the new component automatically, or you can turn off and name all the components at the end together. I prefer the latter method where I turn off the automatic annotation because if I delete something in between, I don't want to skip numbers. Then we have Hierarchy Navigator, which we'll discuss in the future videos as it's a tad bit complicated to understand for beginners. In the next video, we'll see how we can use other tools and create an interesting schematic. If you have any questions regarding the topic we discussed in this video or any other questions related to PCB, you can always reach out to us at PCB Cupid Q&A. If you like watching this kind of content, make sure to subscribe to this channel and also share this with people who might be interested in this kind of content. Until then, keep learning and keep creating.